Welcome back to This is a Commander channel, where this is a Commander channel, and today I'm going to talk about Commander Tough Rules and Cool Interactions, episode 88. Today's episode is going to take a look at, well, a whole bunch. I keep doing this. I pick something that I think will be simple, but then I just keep going deeper and deeper into the well of complexity. I had to limit myself to stop this from becoming a 20-minute long episode. So today I'm going to cover an aspect of special interactions, mana abilities, making payments, and priority. So let's jump straight into all of this. Some of the most popular Pillow Fort style cards in Commander are Propagation, Ghostly Prison, Sphere of Safety, and the much lesser known Koskan Falls. And they all have similar effects of forcing you to pay for each creature that you want to attack with. So before we get into the next part of the video, let's clarify what these abilities are not. They are not triggered abilities. They do not use the stack. For an example of one that looks super similar to them, but actually is a triggered ability and does use the stack, we can see that on Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, which says, whenever a creature an opponent control attacks, if you're the defending player, create a 3/3 red ogre creature token unless that creature's controller pays 3 generic mana. Okay, so now on to the next bit. On screen now are 4 cards. Most are pretty well known, but let's read through their important parts that are relevant to this episode. Lion's Eye Diamond, it's a wild card that has changed over Magic's history, so I'm going to read its latest Oracle text, which is, discard your hand, sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond to add 3 mana of any one color. Activate only as an instant. Deathrite Shaman's first ability says, tap to exile target land card from a graveyard, add 1 mana of any color. Priest of Forgotten Gods says to tap and sacrifice 2 other creatures to have any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. Then you add black and draw a card. And then Selvala Explorer Returned says tap to have each player reveal the top card of their library. For each non-land card revealed this way, you add a green mana and you gain 1 life. Then each player draws a card. So what do all of these have in common? Clearly, they all have an activated ability that can be used to generate mana. Now, what if I told you that not all of these 4 cards can be used to pay for those Pillow Fort enchantments that I listed earlier? Can you tell by reading them again which ones may not be able to be used? Before I get to the answer, I'm going to read some bits from the comprehensive rules and see if that helps you to figure it out if you don't already know. Section 116 of the CR covers special actions in Magic, so feel free to look more into that if you want. There are currently 10 special actions in Magic as of the recording of this video, with new ones being added every now and then. Some of the more recent ones regarding the Companion ability and Foretell ability are pretty recent. But the one that we care about in the context of this video is CR 116.2D, which says, some effects from static abilities allow a player to take an action to ignore the effect from that ability for a duration. Doing so is a special action. A player can take such an action anytime they have priority. Okay, now on to the next part. Mana abilities are covered in Comprehensive Rules section 605, and as always, there's a whole lot there, but there are only 2 specific parts that I will pick for this episode. The first is CR 605.1a that says, an activated ability is a mana ability if it meets all of the following criteria. It doesn't require a target. It could add mana to a player's mana pool when it resolves. And it's not a loyalty ability. And then the next part that I will read is CR 605.3a. It says, a player may activate an activated mana ability whenever they have priority, whenever they are casting a spell or activating an ability that requires a mana payment, or whenever a rule or effect asks for a mana payment, even if it's in the middle of casting or resolving a spell or activating a resolving ability. Okay, so there's all the technical stuff. And here is another look at one of the Pillow Fort cards, Ghostly Prison. In fact, here are two versions of it. The original printing and some other versions of it have had a little bit of extra text added onto them that may help out in figuring out what we're doing here. And then finally, back to the 4 cards that all have activated abilities that can add mana, but not all of them can be used to pay for those Pillow Fort cards. Here's another hint. Only one of these can actually be used to pay for those Pillow Fort cards. And then your final hint, the reason that only one of these can be used to pay is because that 3 of these cards do not actually have mana abilities. Okay, one of the 3 that can't pay actually does have a mana ability, but it has its own built-in timing restriction that makes it so that it cannot be used to pay for the Pillow Fort cards. Okay, enough hints and such. The answer is that only the Selvala can pay for the Pillow Fort cards. Based on the requirements from CR 605.1a, we can see that none of these are loyalty abilities, which is good, and we can also see that all of them have the possibility to add mana when activated. So we're all good there as well. But then we get to that target part, and we can see that both the priest and the shaman have a target listed in their abilities. Even though the priest says any number of target players, meaning that you could choose to pick 0 target players, it still has target in the abilities text, and therefore the game does not consider it to be a mana ability. The LED actually does pass all 3 of the checks, and it is a mana ability, but it has that added bit on its ability that says activate only as an instant, and that is what stops it from being able to be used to pay for those pillows. Which I'll get to why that is in just a bit, but before that, Selvala's Parlay ability, despite it having all that crazy text on it about revealing cards, gaining life, drawing cards, and maybe not even adding any mana if no player reveals a non-land card, it still checks all those requirements and is therefore, in the game's eyes, a mana ability. Okay, so sure, 2 of these may not technically be mana abilities, and one that has a timing restriction to it for instant speed only, but why does that stop them? Well, CR 116 covered how paying for those pillows is a special action. They're not abilities that enter the stack and give players a chance to respond to. No players gain priority during that time, and you must have priority in order to activate an ability. Even a mana ability is an activated ability that requires priority to activate. So how then are we ever able to pay for those pillows? That is where the other CR that I read comes into play. CR 605.3a is the rule that grants mana abilities a special ability to be used when the game requires a payment to be made, even when that is mid-resolution of a spell or ability, which is a time that players do not traditionally gain priority. This is also why mana abilities do not use the stack, nor can they be responded to. This is not quite a bonus question, but just some bonus facts. You can use Pithing Needle to stop the abilities on the priest and the shaman, but not the Selvala and the LED, because again, they are mana abilities. The timing restriction on LED doesn't make it so that the needle stops it, and the life gain card draw on Selvala cannot be interacted with, although it can be replaced. And speaking of Pithing Needle, I'm sure this interaction will probably never come up in a game of Commander due to this card seeing almost no play in Commander. I even checked EDHREC, and it is in less than 210 decks out of 1,381,000, which is like 0.01%. Anyhow, Circling Vultures is a weird little card, and if you read its last ability, as it's written on the card, and even its oracle text, which is, you may discard Circling Vultures anytime you could cast an instant. Both versions of it sounds like an activated ability, with the activation being discarding the vultures. Crazy enough, it's not an activated ability. It's just a static ability telling you that at any point in the game that you could cast an instant, you could just discard it for no effect. Things that trigger from discarding it will still trigger. but on the card itself, there is no effect, there is no payoff. It's almost like the closest thing to a special action that isn't an actual special action. There are so many more things that I want to cover with mana abilities, priority, and special actions, so expect to see those in the future. Did I manage to trick any of you with these 4 cards that I picked? Please do let me know down in the comments. I love reading those, and it always helps me to figure out what kinds of cards I should use for examples in future episodes. Anyhow, that's all I've got for today's episode. As always, I hope that all of you have found this video to be entertaining at least, and I hope that a few of you maybe even learned something about these crazy, insane, ridiculous rules in this great game of Magic. Have a good one. Ta-ta.